Hey, Gov Seekers, the Gover Seekertons, how are you? Welcome to episode 147. We were off last week due to traveling, and we're back here today. I'm wearing a shirt that matches. Look at this blue little thing, matches my backdrop, right? Isn't that fancy? My hair's looking nice and tight and crisp, looking good. Holly Horn is our moderator, and everybody watching on my YouTube and Lee Camp's YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the other gentleman's YouTube. That always helps. And then, of course, we are on Rockfin as well. And we've got a fantastic show for you. So I hope you're ready. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, buckle up. I'm drinking this. This is either iced tea, scotch, or human urine. You decide. Maybe it's just scotch and urine. I don't know. A lot of people drink that. Scotch with a urine back. Did you order that? Is that the drinks you guys order? All right, folks. Let's get ready. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Government Secrets, episode 147, with the two most censored comedians in the United States, Lee Camp and Graham Elwood.
Hey, Graham, judging by the coffee-colored liquid you just held up, it's been a long time since you saw scotch. And also, if that's the color of your urine, you need to see a doctor immediately. Like, immediately.
Doesn't anybody have, like, just dark brown, caramel-colored urine?
Doesn't anybody have espresso-colored urine? That's like if you're drinking gravy as your main liquid source.
Doesn't everybody urinate coffee ice cream? They don't,
Well, you just proved that you've been sober a while, Graham.
All right, it's iced tea. Come on. Dang it. I was really hoping people would think.
Anyway, I am in a great mood because it appears that the International Criminal Court in their interim ruling has found that Israel's committing genocide.
Oh,
now it is just an interim ruling, so the U.S. will now invade The Hague, and the ruling will be changed. But still,
how long? How many seconds did it take after that ruling for Israel to call The Hague anti-Semitic, or like how long did it take?
Oh, prior. Actually started 2 years ago. Yeah. So, no, they're definitely, not only have they been called anti-Semitic, but they've called South Africa for accusing Israel of committing a genocide. They're clearly committing. South Africa's been called by Israel the legal arm of Hamas.
Oh, right. So Hamas tunnels under hospitals, and that's why they need to kill children. And now they
actually tunnel all the way to South Africa.
That's what I was going to say. That seems relevant that they would tunnel all the way down to South Africa.
Totally. And so they have a well-known connection to South Africa. Yeah. They just pop up there and file their legal briefs.
God, Israel is sounding more and more crazy. They just sound more and more crazy.
Yeah, it is kind of striking. It's almost like the people ruling Israel right now have been given a list, like a document on how to destroy Israel's future, and they're just doing that.
No, they're doing two things very clearly. They're creating more anti-Semitism, and they are like guaranteeing the demise of Israel. Like they're
yeah.
But this is what right-wing dictators do when they get on power-hungry things. They drive countries into the ground, and
it's also what colonial. I mean, this goes with right-wing lunatics, but it's what colonial powers do when they're collapsing and they're losing their power, and it's the writings on the wall. They basically see how many people they can kill, and they think that's going to sustain them. And in many ways, that's the direction the U.S. has gone. In certain ways, it's not as clear as the genocide against Palestinians, but the U.S. has killed 6 million with our global war on terror. So we've killed far more than Israel has so far. But Yeah, it's how colonial powers that are collapsing respond.
Yeah, it's a good old colonial collapse.
But still,
Yeah, it's a win. You got to celebrate the
win.
wins. In on our side of the table, we don't get a lot of wins. We don't get a lot of big wins. This is the anti-war politically homeless crowd. We don't get a lot of big wins, so this is nice.
Even though literally the United States has passed something saying we will invade The Hague if they try and prosecute us for anything, and the U.S. may now invade The Hague. I don't know, because we consider Israel part of the United States, but
well, they're getting more money than the United States. I mean, don't they have free healthcare in Israel?
They do. In many ways, the U.S., because we give them billions of dollars, in many ways, the U.S. funds the healthcare of Israelis.
Wow. Anyone filing for bankruptcy because of medical debt? I hope that.
Yep. Number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States.
Hope that lands well.
Yeah.
They get healthcare and we don't. So right on, buddy. We've got two exciting. I went back to a good old fashioned operation.
Surgical, right?
Surgical.
Operation Fishbowl was actually when they removed a fishbowl from a man's gallbladder.
Yeah, he had a full fishbowl in his gallbladder.
We can do yours first.
All right, let's do it. I haven't done one of these in a while. A fan sent me a list of projects and operations that have been declassified, and I was like, "Well, aren't you sweet?" Some of them we've already covered.
And for those of you watching and listening right now, and I know it's a lot of you listening because we are the 64th biggest media podcast in the English-speaking world.
Eat it, podcast 65. Eat it, like right in your face.
Eat it, two guys talking about beers on their front lawn. You losers are 65th.
Podcast 65 through 100, your lives are useless. Like we've crushed you in so many ways.
Oh, but you were talking about crowdsourcing the topics. And listen, fans, you are welcome to send in topics because our goal from the start of this podcast is for us to do as little work as possible. So please send us topics. Totally down for it.
Since, as we've pointed out to you, our pre-production meeting literally happens on the air of, I don't know, do you want to do yours first or do you want to do like so?
Speaking of that, are we still doing casual Fridays or?
Yeah, we absolutely are doing casual Fridays.
Okay.
I will just be in a tank top on Fridays. I have a collared shirt. This is a work shirt.
Because I was worried I'd waxed my chest for nothing. But
no. You always waxed your chest for the right reasons.
For the right reasons.
Folks, go to patreon.com/government secrets and support the Lee's chest waxing tier that helps pay for Lee's glisten smooth chest
waxing tier.
It is such a great tier. All right, let's do it. Government secrets segment number 1, Operation Fishbowl. So Lee, when you hear Operation Fishbowl, what does it sound like? What do you think it is?
I'm assuming the CIA made a giant fishbowl, put roughly 20 to 30 college students who volunteered in it, and then filled it with types of nuclear radioactive material to see how they would respond.
And LSD. They just put it in a swimming pool and a handful of prostitutes, and they just let them all swim around.
They just whirled it once a day. They whirled it around with a big stick.
Basically like one of those big pool cleaner guys just comes in and he just stirs it.
Just stirs it. Yeah. Exactly.
Like some giant weird MK Ultra bouillabaisse. Yeah, is what they did. Well, Lee, let's go. We haven't done this in a while. I'm going to give you a multiple choice question to guess what Operation Fishbowl was.
Okay.
Operation Fishbowl, was it A, as you said, the aforementioned fraternity prank in the fishbowl with LSD? B, a crazy kind of punch that you put at parties? Some people call it jungle juice. C, high altitude nuclear tests, or D, a fishing trip with senior Pentagon officials?
I'm gonna go Alan Dulles drinking jungle juice.
Yes, it is a party cocktail that was created by Alan Dulles. Oh, sorry, it's C. It's high altitude nuclear tests.
What could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Just those words together all sound great. Like, why? What could possibly happen when you disturb the atmosphere?
And the irony of naming it Operation Fishbowl, which you drop food into the top of a fishbowl and then it all slowly filters down onto the fish and everything inside. Like, sounds apropos.
I think that's probably the psycho nut burger. Like, whoever came up with this name was like, yeah, it'll be like that. It is one of these. It's this great cross section of my two favorite things, which is CIA operations and nukes. Like, it's really the perfect because it's crazy and insanely dangerous and careless.
Yeah.
So here's Operation Fishbowl. There's high altitude nuclear tests in 1962 that were carried out by the United States as part of a larger Operation Dominic nuclear test program. The Operation Fishbowl nuclear tests were originally to be completed during the first half of 1962 with 3 tests named Bluegill, Starfish, and Urika. The first attempt was delayed until June, planning for Operation Fishbowl, as well as many other nuclear tests in the region, began rapidly in response to the sudden Soviet announcement on August 30th, 1961, that they were ending a 3-year moratorium on nuclear testing. The rapid planning of a very complex operations necessitated many changes as the project progressed.
What was the? I don't know if you see this in your reading. There were they testing the impact of the like the fallout of the radiation or what it did to people, or were they? Did they just not even consider that and they were just testing nukes in the upper atmosphere because that's a good place to test them?
Probably a little bit of both. I think they just kind of. I mean, honestly, some of it was just like, yeah, we need to be testing since the Soviets are testing. But where and how they carried out the test lead, that is really what makes this a great segment. All of the tests were launched on missiles from Johnston Island in the Pacific Ocean north of the equator. Johnston Island had already been established as a launch site for the United States high-altitude nuclear tests rather than the other locations in the Pacific proving grounds.
And let me take a wild guess. There was about 500 indigenous people that lived there, and we just turned them into glowing green monsters.
Oh, no, there was, this was so sympathetic to the indigenous people of the region. This is what they did. Lewis Strauss, the chairman of the United States Atomic Energy Commission, opposed doing any high altitude tests at locations that had been used for earlier Pacific nuclear tests. His opposition was motivated by fears that the flash from the nighttime high altitude detonations might blind civilians who were living on nearby islands. Johnston Island was a remote location, more distant from populated areas than other potential test locations. So to protect the residents of the Hawaiian Islands from flash blindness or permanent retinal injury from the bright nuclear flash, the nuclear missiles of Operation Fishbowl were launched generally toward the southwest of Johnston Island so that the detonations would be farther from Hawaii.
Very, very considerate of them. I mean, that's just, you know what that is? That's just caring about people, Graham.
Yeah, it's like, hey, there's some concerns here. And then someone went, all right, just point them a little more that way.
A little over there.
It's fine. If it'll get these worried Nelly Nancy, you know what I mean? Just stop complaining. So that's, those are the precautions taken. Just point it.
Yep.
Nobody went, hey, this is insane that we're detonating these. They just said, just point it a little further away from Hawaii.
We did it at an hour when the kids had gone to bed. Okay,
Yeah, we're not monsters.
we're not monsters.
We did it during primetime sitcoms, like when Gilligan's Island was on, so that everyone was inside watching it. The Uraka was to be a test of about a 1 megaton yield at a very high altitude. The proposed Eureka test was always controversial, especially after the damage caused by satellites by Starfish Prime detonation. So they've already been just destroying. Eureka was finally canceled, and an extensive reevaluation of Operation Fishbowl plan was made during an 82-day operations pause after the Bluegill Prime disaster of July 25th, as described below. Let's go to that one.
What do you want to bet this testing is the actual cause of the hole in the ozone?
It has to be.
They're like, it's because you've been spraying aerosol hairspray, and meanwhile they're setting off nukes in the ozone layer.
Yeah, it's like, do you think it's everybody using aerosol, or do you think we blew a hole in the ozone? I don't know. Let's blame the average citizens. Let's not blame the United States military and the psychos that run the Pentagon. The first planned test of Operation Fishbowl was June 2nd, 1962, when a nuclear warhead was launched from Johnston Island on a Thor missile just after midnight. Although the Thor missile appeared to be on a normal trajectory, the radar tracking system lost track of the missile.
Good. You know, I would put that on step one of what to do with a nuke, is keep track of it.
That feels like the top of the dry erase board in the like planning room of like, don't lose track of the nuke. And then maybe you underline it a couple of times.
Right so below really... number one, give it a cool name. Number two, don't lose it.
No. Give it a cool name. 3, who's planning the Christmas party? Like, I think you put them in that order. And
the Christmas party.
Sign up for the Office talent show.
Secret Santa. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you don't want, typically losing track of a nuke, from what I understand, is potentially problematic.
It's a little problematic, but often those who lose the nuke end up getting top honors. So
yeah, well,
it doesn't hurt a career.
Look, losing a nuke, it's not the end of the world.
Lose one nuke, shame on nuke. Lose 17.
Look, Lee, a nuke in the hand is better than 2 nukes lost in the ocean.
Yeah.
So
yep. I am impressed you've avoided the nuke in the bush joke. So the whole audience was geared up for nuke in the bush being your favorite porn name, and
Nuke in the Bush is actually the porn parody of Duke Nukem, that game from the 90s. So after the radar tracking system lost track of the missile, because of a large number of ships and aircraft in the area, well, that's good that they were shooting up above ships. There was no way to predict if the missile was on a safe trajectory. So the range safety officers ordered the missile with its warhead to be destroyed. No nuclear detonation occurred and no data was obtained, but subsequent investigation found that the Thor was actually following the proper flight trajectory.
So basically, they have an abort switch that destroys the missile and the nuke within it, which they used. But let's keep in mind, this also means that you're blowing up a nuclear weapon in the sky and hoping that the abort switch worked correctly.
Yes. You're hoping that you're just aborting without detonating the warhead.
Without detonating the nuke, yeah.
So you're just like basically just blowing up a regular type of warhead above a bunch of ships.
And everyone watching Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. And everyone watching Gilligan's Island. Then there was Operation Starfish. Well, Starfish was the second planned test of Operation Fishbowl, and that was on June 19th, 17 days after the bluegill fiasco. The launch of a Thor missile with a nuclear warhead occurred just before midnight from Johnston Island. The Thor missile flew a normal trajectory for 59 seconds. Then the rocket engine suddenly stopped, and the missile began to break apart.
Oh, okay.
The range safety officer, this guy was getting a lot of work in June of 62, ordered the destruction of the missile and the warhead. The missile was between 30 and 35,000 feet in altitude when it was destroyed. Which was fine unless you were on Johnston Island where some of the missile parts fell. A large amount of missile debris fell into the ocean in the vicinity of the island. Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal and Underwater Demolition Team swimmers recovered approximately 250 pieces of the missile assembly during the next 2 weeks. Some of the debris was contaminated with plutonium.
Good.
Non-essential personnel had been evacuated from Johnston Island during the test. Well, sucks for you, essential personnel.
They chose not to tell the 8 indigenous people living there.
Or did they already run them off the island and stole their land?
Probably. So this made me, you listing all these tests and all these failed tests made me think, how many times do you need to test nuclear weapons? Couldn't you just, like, after 10 or 15 be like, I think we got it, and stop blowing up nuclear weapons? And so I looked up how many nuclear tests the United States have. Graham, is it 25, 145, 1,054, or 100,000?
1,054.
You got it right.
Yes.
1,054 nuclear tests. How many goddamn nuclear bombs do you have to set off?
How much has those 1,054, how much just those alone have hurt the environment and the ecosystem of this planet? Like, how?
Well, no, they never have any environmental impact.
Oh, not at all. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
The tests have shown even wild ferrets and mongoose, they love them. They love nuclear tests.
Yeah, mongoose. That's mongoose love nuclear tests. They've always said that, which is fantastic. Oh my God, it's one of this. It's a classic government secret story of it gets more horrific the more we investigate it, the more we.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Oh, well, one of those 1,054 was the third attempt of Starfish Prime, which sounds like a Transformer character. On July 9th, 1962, at 0900 Coordinated Universal Time, which was 9 seconds after 10 p.m. on July 8th, Johnston Island local time, the Starfish Prime test was successfully detonated at an altitude of 400 kilometers, 250 miles. The coordinates of the detonation were 16 degrees, 28 minutes north latitude, 169 degrees, 38 minutes, blah, 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 blah. The actual weapon yield was very close to the design yield, which had been described by various sources at different values in the range of 1.4 to 1.45 megatons. The Starfish Prime caused an electromagnetic pulse, which was far larger than expected, so much larger that it drove much of the instrumentation off scale, causing great difficulty in getting accurate measurements. The Starfish Prime electromagnetic pulse also made those effects known to the public by causing electrical damage in Hawaii, which was 900 miles away.
Wow.
It knocked out 300 streetlights, setting off numerous burglar alarms and damaging a telephone company microwave link.
900 miles away.
900 miles away.
Well, I'm sure that had no impact on like the whales, like 10 miles from the blast.
No, they were fine. The sea life was fine. They love
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. It's like
Yeah.
a rave to them. Um, a total of 27 sounding rockets were launched from Johnston Island to obtain experimental data from the shot, which the first of the support rockets being launched 2 hours and 45 minutes before the launch of the Thor missile carrying the nuclear warhead. Most of these smaller instrumentation rockets were launched just after the time of the launch of the main Thor missile. A large number of rocket-borne instruments were launched from a firing area at Barking Sands, Kauai, in the Hawaiian Islands. There was a bunch of ships in the air, USS ships. After the Starfish Prime detonation, bright auroras were observed in the detonation area, as well as the southern conjugate region of the other side of the equator from the detonation, according to one of the first
There
technical
you
reports.
go. You get beautiful auroras from these.
Right? It's like a fireworks show.
That's awesome.
It's just, think of it, Lee, like kind of the Northern Lights and a fireworks show that also has an electric magnetic pulse.
Yeah.
Right? That seems like not that big of a deal.
Aurora Borealis, eat your heart out. This is Aurora Borealis. This is the best. You kill a bunch of sea life. You get a light show.
Yeah. You knock out an island 900 miles away. It's great.
Yeah.
They quote said a very large area of the Pacific was illuminated by the aurora phenomenon, far from south of the magnetic conjugate area, through the burst to the far north conjugate area. So it went really from Tonga Tapu to French Frigate Shoals. An interesting side effect was that the Royal New Zealand Air Force was aided in anti-submarine maneuvers by light from the bomb. Oh, neat. The Starfish Prime radiation belt persisted at high altitude for many months and damaged the United States satellites as well as the United Kingdom satellite. There was like 5 satellites total that were damaged, and also damaged the Soviet satellite. All of these satellites failed completely within several months of the Starfish detonation.
Oh, man. When we kill all of humanity, it's it's gonna be like you did not see it coming.
Yeah, it was.
You can't act shocked.
Yeah, we are. And they continue with the Fishbowl series. They continued it all throughout 1962. They did Bluegill again. They did Bluegill Double Prime in October. Checkmate, October 19th. Bluegill Triple Prime. These names are insane. Kingfish in November of 62. Tightrope. It's like it was, yeah, they did this all throughout 62. And just, those are like, and it caused just a myriad of problems. So that is Operation Fishbowl.
Awesome. We're straight up awesome. I don't know another better word than that.
Yeah, I mean, why would anyone fear their own military when it knocks out its own satellites and its own power grid on one of its states, islands? Like,
yeah.
And
what did they learn from that test versus the 900 before it? They were like, turns out egrets are not a fan.
Yeah. Turns out they get cooked right in the water. It's like a fish boil.
Yeah, they are delicious. That's what we learned from test number 903. Egrets cooked while flying, delish.
But in all honesty, these psychos went, "Ooh, electromagnetic pulse. This could work." Like they saw that and went, "Hey."
Yeah, probably. Yeah. We could set off a nuke above Russia and disable their instruments without killing as many people.
Yeah,
totally.
So that's our psychos in government, almost killing all of us. So
All right, let's get to America's lost 2,000-year-old city.
Segment number 2.
All right, so I really like this story for a couple of reasons. One is that I always like stories when I'm like, what the what? Like how have I never heard that that the United States has our own Pompeii and it's like never talked about? Another reason it's a good story is because it is essentially largely hidden Native American history, which is what fits into the government secrets aspect of this. If it were not quite common and maybe 1% less so over the past 30 years than it was when I was a kid, but if it were not quite common for the American government, American school system to heavily highlight all of white history and maybe a little bit of black history like civil rights, while completely almost ignoring Native American history, with the exception of, Pocahontas or like one story where the Native Americans got along with the white dudes or whatever. Like, it's like we have thousands of years of history in this, country. It wasn't, now, of course, using the term country, nation states is bullshit, but etc. But this land area, Turtle Island, we have thousands of years of history here, and we basically focus through our education system, our government, etc., on a few hundred, and act like those are all of the heroes. Not to mention ignoring women and black people as well. But this is by design. Like, this isn't the reason we don't know about. I mean, by we don't know, I don't mean there's not academics that know. There are academics that know, but we, meaning your average person like me, don't know about so much of Native American history is by design. Because when you genocide a people, one of the big next steps is destroying the history so that you replace your culture, you replace their culture with your culture, and you act like they barely existed.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to highlight this story, was another reason. But the idea that because here's the thing: is Pompeii is this huge thing. Everyone in the world knows about it, and for good reason. It's crazy that there is a city that is so well preserved, and you could go there today and see these magical buildings that have been largely preserved, etc. But it's incredible. But in the United States, we have something not identical, but something that's close, and yet most people have never heard of it, and I had never heard of it. It's in Washington State, and on the Washington coast, near Cape Flattery, which is right, it juts out into the ocean there. There's no town there. The nearest settlement is Nia Bay. This is coming from a BBC article several months ago. Nia Bay sits 8 miles away by road and is a coast-hugging community that's home to the Makah, an indigenous tribe who have fished and thrived in this region for centuries. And one of the biggest kind of aspects of their culture is whale hunting. They're the only, because it's been passed down through thousands of years, they're the only tribe with explicit treaty rights to whale hunting in the United States. One of the tribal members says, our expertise in whaling distinguished us from other tribes. It was very important culturally in the stratification of Makah society. Whaling was at the top of the hierarchy. Hunting had the capacity to supply food for a vast number of people and materials like tools. They now have a 27,000-acre reservation on Washington's Olympic Peninsula, which, of course, 27,000 acres is a tiny amount of land for a people that never used to be confined to any area. So it is a very small little area they can still call home to some degree. Of course, even when you're on a reservation, when you're surrounded by the gut-wrenching disgustingness of consumerist American culture, it's It's like being neck deep in a swamp. It's not fun.
Yeah.
The Macaw history is exceptionally well documented. In contrast to other North American civilizations, a snapshot of their past was captured and preserved by a single cataclysmic episode. In 1970, a brutal Pacific storm uncovered part of an abandoned coastal Macaw village called Ozette, located 15 miles south of Cape Flattery. Part of the village had been buried by a mudslide that was possibly triggered by a dramatic seismic event around 1700, almost a century before the first European contact in the area. Recent research argues that ancestors of the Macaw or related Wakashan-speaking people have been present in the area for at least 2,000 years, but possibly as much as 4,000 years, which, if proven, would change our understanding of prehistory in the Olympic Peninsula and Vancouver Island. So these people are there for 4,000 years. The United States has existed for a few hundred, and we act like we own history.
Wow. 4,000 years.
Yeah.
And again, why
thousands before even Jesus was nailed to the cross.
And that's actually in that preserved city is a plaque that says, "We were here 2,000 years before Jesus was nailed to a cross."
Yep. They have it up there.
That's in their gift shop. I mean, again, it's the same old thing we always say, but it's like it bears repeating, which is, why is this deliberate? Why isn't this talked about? This is a Hollywood movie. This is a great story. I mean,
I
this
know. It could be one of the best tourist attractions in the entire United States.
And what's wrong with saying, hey, we found new information that actually changes everything, changes the whole timeline that we've come up with for North America?
I mean, like, largely there's nothing wrong with it. And some people are waking up to that reality. But what's wrong with it in a larger sense is most states are not going to pay for education that teaches that indigenous culture had been here for thousands of years, and then white people showed up a few hundred ago and killed everyone. Like, that's not the history of the United States that we want to be selling.
No, it doesn't fit with the we all got together on Thanksgiving and had a party narrative.
And there just happened to be a few diseases that were like not cool. You know, we couldn't have known.
We had no idea that we were deliberately giving them blankets full of diseases.
Yeah,
but
no idea.
Anyway, stop asking questions. Best Buy's having a sale on Black Friday, so make sure you go there and trample your neighbor for a discount TV.
Thanksgiving Day sale. Celebrate the genocide of the indigenous people of the United States by getting a free beer mug at Target if you buy over $35 worth of stuff.
We are, without really knowing it, we are actually celebrating the genocide by just having Americans trample each other to get a discounted microwave or whatever. So
there you go.
That's how we celebrate it.
I mean, they could, to the people in line at Black Friday, they could hand out bows and arrows and be like, look, it's all fair. Whatever happens, happens.
It's really, Black Friday is America's The Purge. It really just is like, go kill each other for a TV. It's amazing.
So in the mudslide, the mud had protected embedded organic matter by sealing it off from oxygen. As a result, thousands of well-preserved artifacts that would normally have rotted, from intact woven cedar baskets to dog hair blankets, like they still had blankets from 1700 perfectly preserved. Wooden storage boxes were able to be painstakingly unearthed during a pioneering archaeological dig. And this is also why we don't have many other Native American, archaeological digs and areas to go see around the United States, is because most of them were built out of things that did not last hundreds of years. But here you have an example of one that was perfectly preserved.
And then is there evidence, or maybe you're going to get to it, that this was preserved from a volcano, like an explosion like Pompeii, or?
It was just a mudslide.
Oh, okay.
It was a mudslide that now I don't know if they know the event. I mean, maybe earthquake, maybe just a hurricane type squall. I don't know, but it was a mudslide that sealed everything in such a thick, deep layer of mud that there was no oxygen getting to it, so nothing aged really. So it is different than Pompeii. I said it's not perfectly analogous, but
Okay.
in certain ways. Scientists hailed to find a Western Pompeii, and the Washington Post at the time called it the most comprehensive collection of artifacts of pre-European contact Indian culture ever discovered in the United States. I want to show. Here's some of the hieroglyphs. Petroglyphs on the rocks in Washington State. The Ozette dig lasted from 1970 until 1981 and ultimately unearthed around 55,000 artifacts from 6 cedar houses covered by the slide. The Makah, like many indigenous groups, have a strong oral tradition with much of their history passed down through storytelling, song, and dance. The evidence unearthed at Ozette affirmed these stories and added important details. So they learned a lot about the history of these people. 55,000 artifacts. We have all these materials preserved in the places where they were actually used. It helps tell us more about the social and spatial relationship of the people who lived in the houses. While much of the material dated from around 1700, some of it was significantly older. Indeed, archaeologists ultimately determined that multiple mudslides had hit Ozette over a number of centuries. Beneath one of the houses, another layer of well-preserved material dated back 800 years. The oldest finds so far have been radiocarbon dated to 2,000 years, and there are middens in the area that are at least 4,000 years old. I had to look up that word. It means basically dung heaps. Basically, the shitter. Apparently, archaeologists don't use the term shitter. So.
I don't know. It feels like that's a scientific term. Like, I feel like that's something that they.
But so really well preserved stuff dating back 2,000 years, which is crazy. And of course, this is not common both in Native American history, but also in, Palestine and Egypt, where societies will keep building on top of ancient societies. So you may find something from 800 years ago, and then you keep digging, and you find a 2,000-year-old society beneath that.
Wow.
In 1979, the tribe opened the Makah Cultural and Research Center in Nia Bay with a museum to house the greatest hits of the collection. The 500 pieces currently on display represent less than 1% of the overall find. And yet again, this goes with kind of basically suppressing this history. Like, this should be on the list of American cultural sites with easily with like Monticello and Mountain Vernon and all the rich white people, slave owners that we celebrate.
Oh my God. This should be like, it should be one of those things that like family every summer, like, well, you go to Yellowstone Park, you go, to Mount Rushmore, and then you go here. Like if you're in the Pacific North, you go to this location. Like this should, again, yeah. I'm hearing about this for the first time today. Like,
yeah, I was today years old.
Yeah, this is how old I am when I heard about this.
And like it said, the museum currently, because I imagine it also doesn't have much money to that museum, has 1% of the pieces they found. Sure. So if we put the money into it that we put into, disgusting, disgraceful monuments like Mount Rushmore, which shat all over indigenous culture, we could easily display 10,000 of these artifacts. So the journalist describes, they say, and that image you were just looking at is one of the wooden Makah houses, okay. What they looked like. The journalist says, I saw 13-foot whaling harpoons, wooden paddles, sealskin buoys. A large central space was taken up with 2 red cedar canoes guarded by a giant whale skeleton. There was a mock-up of the wooden macaw house that I just showed. There was a dorsal fin of a whale studded with hundreds of sea otter teeth, and an unusual figurine of a woman lying prostrate in the act of childbirth, which, of course, then, as in now, is considered magical, and I'm sure something that was worshipped at the time. These artifacts, along with ornate seal clubs and delicate combs, testify to a remarkable level of craftsmanship, which again goes against. That's another reason that you need to, if you're going to genocide a people and replace the modern culture with the ancient culture, another reason you do that is because you don't want the average people across the United States to know, but especially in the earlier days, when after the genocide has taken place, you don't want them to know how sophisticated the people were. That doesn't fit with the whole manifest destiny. We're the more sophisticated people, so we're trying to train the savages and civilize the savages and all that garbage. So you don't want to tell them how advanced these societies were, because that makes people think, maybe they just had a different society than us and they're not lesser people and they don't deserve to be murdered. So that's yet another
Maybe
reason.
their society was even maybe maybe they were even more advanced. Like, that's the other thing. We really don't want to admit that. Like, maybe they were way more advanced than the European colonizers.
In terms of caring about human beings, which if you were it depends on how you view advanced or advancement in society. If you view it as, I got lots of money and I got like 2 jet skis and 3 cars, then we are the most advanced. If you view it as caring for fellow humans and like living in a sustainable nature with the world so that you can have children who actually inherit a world they can live in, they were way more advanced.
You said a bunch of stuff at the end there that just sounded like a bunch of hippie claptrap. You know what I mean? Just sounded
hippie bullshit.
Whoa, everyone getting along. Boo, boo, boo. There's no war profit in your model, so I don't.
If you print it on a T-shirt and sell it, I might respect it.
On a T-shirt that I buy with a dollar bill that has an Illuminati symbol on the back, then I will respect it.
Then I'll look up to it. The caliber of the preservation, which at times was almost surreal. Wesson recalled excavators using fire hoses to blast the clay off vegetation, because when you're trying to blast away a lot of dirt, you use fire hoses to get rid of the mud, and the vegetation would appear in the sunlight for the first time in 300 years, and it would appear like brand new, like bright, leafy green vegetation. Now, because it had never received oxygen to rot. But within 15 to 20 seconds, it would immediately turn black, because it was only still green because it had not received any oxygen in 300 years. In the 1970s, there were still a dozen or so native speakers of this tribe in Nia Bay. Nia Bay today has a population of just more than 1,000 people, an economy that's basically that's mainly fishing. And just to wrap up here, unlike Pompeii, there are no ruins to walk around through anymore, other than they've recreated the houses and put the artifacts in a museum. But you can't go walk in the houses anymore that they dug up, because they backfilled the site in 1981, basically recovered it over in 1981. And so if you go to the actual site, you won't see anything, except you can find some of the petroglyphs carved on rocks. But otherwise you can't see it at the actual site. But I just think it's a tragedy that that there's not some massive museum that has 10,000 of these artifacts, and that we are taught that a perfectly preserved native village that stretched back for thousands of years was found, and we have essentially covered it up, just not acted like it mattered for generations.
Yeah, even if there wasn't a museum, even just why isn't this taught in books in school? Like, why is this like never?
Yeah.
It that's the thing that is just that is so much of what this show is government secrets. It's not just like some CIA operation. It's the government secret of keeping information like this away from us deliberately and only giving us this certain narrative of the history of this country and the world for that matter. It's stunning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you could imagine like a legitimate history of whatever you want to call the United States, this area of land, just in what we know, like if you were to sit down and study that, let's say you spent a year on it. Well, 90% of it would be on various native cultures and what it was like in various times. And then the last 10% would be when the white people arrived and killed 99% of all Native Americans.
Sure.
Like that. So you spend a year in class, and in the last week, you'd actually hear about the white people because that's the amount of the history of this land that we've been a part of.
Yeah. So if this society was here in the Pacific Northwest for 4,000 years, that means they weren't all of North America had people there that long.
Yeah.
And sure, did some of these Native American tribes war with each other and kill each other? Yeah, of course they did. Of course they did. But that should be all we should be telling all of it. We should just talk about the history and the truth of it without any sort of slant or angle. Just like this is what happened. Like just tell this like just tell me what happened. It's so crazy. It's like families that lie about things in their own history, like families, oh, we never wanted you to know. Just tell me the truth, man. Like, just tell me what it is. Like, why does it have to be this creepy cover up? Just say it. Like,
Yeah, you don't want to hear about the United States. The United States has 3 abortions they're not telling you about. No. The family history that's hidden.
Someone in the chat, but there's a great book called 1491, the year before we got there, Columbus got here.
I have not read it, but I've heard great things about 1491. Another great book, which we've mentioned before, is Lies My Teacher Told Me. It gets into some native stuff, but it's mainly about, and actually it gets heavily into Columbus. I remember that. It's been years since I've read it, but it also gets into Lies My Teacher Told Me about modern American history.
Nice. Well, this has been Government Secrets episode 147, where we talked about ancient city and blowing nukes up in the sky. It's a really good episode. I had over 200 people watching in the live stream, which is great. If you're listening to this on whatever podcast platform, please give it a positive review, a thumbs up. All those little things help the analytics.
They made us, those little things made us the 64th biggest media podcast in the English-speaking world.
Yeah, 63, here we come. We're going to eat whatever 63, podcast 63, we're going to eat its face.
Oh my God, those 2 women that talk about how to do your nails, we're going to destroy them.
62 is probably just some like cat treats or something like that. And then
dude, we're bringing it. We're bringing it.
We're bringing it hard. And of course you can support what we do at patreon.com/government secrets. We're going to go there immediately after this show. We do a bonus segment. That's, and if you don't have to watch the bonus segment live, if you do or sign up for the Patreon, you unlock all of we've got, I don't know, 50 some bonus segments over there. So you get a bunch of.
Yeah, so join us over there today, patreon.com/government secrets. But also, I suppose we should announce that we haven't decided when it's going to be, but we're changing the time starting soon.
Yeah, so next week there's no show.
People love that.
People love the mystery of this show.
Yeah.
People were getting too comfortable with this time slot, so we had to shake it up.
Here's the thing. I don't know if fame really goes to your head. I don't know if I could handle being like the 61st biggest media podcast. So we changed the time around to stay in a comfortable area.
if we get in the top 60, I'll go nuts. I'll get an
Yeah.
agent and a helicopter, and I'll just go bananas.
You'll start drinking a lot more of that dark brown urine drink you're drinking.
This is from Kinky. Sorry, thank you. Always great to see Graham and Lee together. Thank you so much, Kinky, for supporting our show. Yeah, we will be announcing a new time starting in February. We don't know what time that is yet. And we've talked about it very little, but we know it's a new time is coming.
In those production meetings, we've talked about it extensively, actually.
I think right now is the most we've talked about it. So this is
Well, I just wanted to warn people because
Yeah.
it's unlikely we will be at this time next week, but we will do our best to let you guys know when.
Yeah, I'm directing this thing next week in Vegas. So for open primary. So I'm not available. There's no show next week for sure.
No show next week.
The week after that, probably might do it. Maybe kind of sort of.
The week
maybe
after that is our new time, Mondays at 4 a.m. Eastern. No, I'm kidding. But
somebody in Europe right now is like, sweet.
Mondays at 4:36 Eastern. But also, I will let people know if you're unfamiliar with my stuff, I live stream 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's at rumble.com/Lee Camp, 4 days a week.
Yes. And then go to grahamelwood.com for all of my stuff. And I will be guest hosting the Orange Pill podcast beginning in February. That is Max Kaiser and Lee and Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert's Bitcoin podcast. I'll be doing that out of El Salvador, which is one of the reasons we're going to be in a new time slot. But yeah, so follow me at grahamelwood.com. And then I think that's it. That's episode 147, Government Secrets. Put it in the books like a forgotten city and nukes in the Pacific. All
right. See you over on Patreon.
See you at Patreon, everybody.